Okay, we are live here. This is March 20th, 2026. This is the beginning of spring. And this is the anniversary, I read somewhere. What is it? There's a couple of things. We were talking about this in the chat room. We enter into Aries, and it has some significance because, we're in the new age, the Aeon of Horus, as they call it, the Ram, Mars, Aries. These are all associated. I call it the age of Mars. Like, we're moving into the age of Mars. It doesn't mean we're going there. If there even is a there. What it means is that we're given an ideal, what you consider to be a utopia, to adopt here. So we will live on Earth as they hypothetically would on Mars. Speaking of, the Martian Pope said, there are so many phonies, so few who are real. That's Elon Musk, who runs the biggest bot farm on the planet. So many phonies, so few are who are the real deal. And he would know. But I responded with, bro, you're an actor pretending to be real. He's an actor, quite literally. He's playing the role of maybe he is somewhat adept at rocket surgery. I'm not taking away that. I know he's good at animation. But I see him as a front man for a number of ideas. And he's sort of the right-wing counter Soros built on the left. Each side has to have what you consider to be its villains, its billionaire villains. And they each agree that the other side's villain is going to bring the end of the world, but their side's billionaire is a savior. And that's how you know these things are fake. Think about it. Every psyop has a hallmark of being bifurcated. So if a character walks onto the world stage and half the population says that's a villain and the other half says that's a savior, they can't be both. Bill Gates cannot be both a savior and a villain. You see, these are mutually exclusive categories, or are they? Well, they're not, because our society has a schism down the middle in these two compartments, and we coexist more or less. This is just the nature of the political horseshoe implemented as model to maintain through dialectics a constant, never-ending, sublimated civil war. I mean, these are Orwellian times, and they always have been. I used to say it's 1984. It's like every new year. It's like it's always been 1984. Okay, so here it is. March 20th is celebrated as the Thelemic New Year, or the equinox of the gods, marking the start of the new aeon, inaugurated by Crowley in 1904. It includes the feast of the supreme ritual, super ritual, commemorating the invocation of Horus. Again, Horus is the Martian, who's also got the red association. You got the hawk head. We're talking about Mars, this body of symbols, and Horus is the hawk-headed version. But the Falcon rockets by Musk and the Mars mission all correlate symbolically with the Aeon of Horus, especially if you recognize what those things are. The rocket's not there to take you to this distant destination, this paradise. It's an obelisk. It's a symbol of the resurrection, the new sun. And the new sun is Osiris, the solar deity being replaced by the Martian, the patriarchal god system being replaced by the androgen. It's also Barron Trump's 20th birthday, and he's a hero. Barron Trump's a hero. And none of the Donald Trump is a woman crowd have come around to explain how he gave birth to Barron when he was 60. But there's this news story on TMZ, which I think Barron paid for, where it's like Barron Trump stops a woman from being savagely beaten. So I'm like, wow, he's a hero. He stepped in and fought. Then I'm like, wait a minute, isn't this guy surrounded by bodyguards and Secret Service? Like, they wouldn't let him go into a supermarket by himself, much less get involved in some kind of a violent melee, some fray. And he's like getting a FaceTime, apparently, from an ex-girlfriend who's with a new boyfriend. And she's like, save me, Baron. So he calls the emergency services, and then they go over there and stop whatever it was. So obviously he's being triangulated against this other guy by the manipulator, who probably incited whatever happened for the sole purpose of putting a hook in the mouth of the son of the richest and most powerful man on the planet right now, or the most powerful man. I mean, the son of a president. She probably sees him as a catch, and it just seems like some elaborate mind game. I don't believe, if she was really being savagely beaten, that she would have called Baron Trump instead of the police. And the whole thing just comes off as a really weak PR stunt. The headline is strong, but if you dig beneath the surface, it's like, I don't know if he's a hero. It's like if I see a burning building and I call the fire department, I'm like, yeah, I saved a bunch of lives today. Meanwhile, the firemen are actually putting themselves in the danger zone. It's like, no, I didn't put out the building. But it's just like him. It runs in the family. You know, the idea of just branding things like dogs marking their territory. Like you put your name on something big enough, you claim you own it. Like the Trump Kennedy Center. Like, okay, it already has a name. It's the Kennedy Center. No, let's put Trump on there. So it just seems to me it's a headline grab, basically building a reputation. I think Trump even has some stuff in his backstory about stopping bad guys, saving the homeless, giving haircuts to the homeless and helping out the poor, but like out of sight of the press. They create this like back legend. Yeah, the Baron Trump Antichrist fan fiction bores me. And then the people who worship Baron Trump should be king. He should be emperor. Like like you inherit. Like these people literally want a king. And then there's this guy driving around. Have you seen Palm Beach Pete? He's this Florida retiree tennis player who looks like Jeffrey Epstein. And I thought it was CGI because I saw a bunch of these CGI fake Epstein videos going around. Well, this guy's real, and he went viral because he looks like Jeffrey Epstein. So what does he do? He goes on TMZ. He's going on podcasts, and he's turning himself into a celebrity. And people are like, "Hey, you look like that famous pedovore, that guy, that's the satanic pedovore who blackmailed the world governments and all of its politicians and celebrities. Can I take a selfie with you?" And so like people are basically treating this guy like a celebrity. It's like, what do you mean? You're making an idol out of a guy because he looks like the worst person on the planet? Like that's weird to me. I mean, that's a disconnect, right? Like if some guy looked like Jeffrey Dahmer, you wouldn't be like, this guy looks like Jeffrey Dahmer. Let me take a selfie with him. It just seems a little out of touch. Like, do they not understand the gravity of what they're accusing this guy of? And now he's a celebrity. And half the comments in there are like, this is the real Epstein. They're just messing with our minds like they did with Jim Carrey. So people are saying, oh, this is Jeffrey Epstein. He's not dead. And now he's living in Florida. And he let himself go viral so they could just put him out in the open. And now he's safe. Meanwhile, the guy doesn't even look like him. If anything, it's like facial blindness. Like, this is what I'm saying. When it comes to like someone will say person A looks like person B. Well, from that angle, in your subjective opinion, you could sort of make that case because a lot of people vaguely resemble others. But that's not enough information to make that claim. Like if you're going to say this guy looks like this guy, it's like, okay, I want to see profile, side view, front view, height, and other factors before you can make these ridiculous claims. Because this guy might have looked like Jeffrey Epstein from across the street while driving with a hat on and glasses, but up close, um, I don't really see it. I don't see it at all. Yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't really care about Gwyneth Paltrow. I never really followed her stuff. I think she was good in Seven, the one where they put her head in the box. But in fact, I was really annoyed by Shallow Hell. In fact, that one really warped Jack Black and her, in my view. I think that was a really twisted movie. Have you seen Shallow Hell, where Hal is like brainwashed by Tony Robbins into finding um, heavy women attractive? Like the whole movie was just built on body shaming, but in a really grotesque way. I didn't get it. But anyway, Gwyneth Paltrow wore like a big fat suit for the movie. And after that, I was like, okay, I liked her better with her head in the box. But anyway, she shows up to these award ceremonies because they're always giving themselves awards over there. And she doesn't look the same because she got some kind of cosmetic upgrade or something. And she looks like she got some kind of cosmetic upgrade. And I'm like, why aren't people calling her out as the latest Illuminati sacrifice? Oh, that's not her. They just sacrificed her because she was going to blow the whistle. She was going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein and pizza. So they had to kill her and replace her with a clone that they got from the same clone factory where they got the Jim Carrey clone. It's connected to Timu, and their clones never quite look like the person that you ordered. So I'm saying, is that what happened? Like, who's blowing the alarm? Who's gonna blow the whistle here and expose this big conspiracy that they got rid of Gwyneth Paltrow? And I'm just trying to be consistent here because I think the Jim Carrey thing was way out of line. I don't think that there was enough discrepancy. I think we were going off of certain angles and pictures and rumors and wishful thinking and conspiratainment candy. But I'm saying, where are all these people talking about Jim Carrey distracting us from the war in Iran now that Gwyneth Paltrow looks a little bit different? All right, let's see. Go through the comments. Oh, yeah, is it Friday? Clown World. Yeah, it is. Jamarian says, I heard a number of psychic women talking about how Barron Trump is slated to be the Antichrist. The problem with a lot of people making these claims is that when they're wrong, they don't reverse engineer their mistakes and correct course. They don't explain how they got it wrong, or they never lose credibility. You know, and like I'm not making predictions like on 7-Eleven, the space needle's going to get blown up, or 6-11 space needle's going to get blown up. I'm not the one putting dates on it, but I understand why they do. So specifically, Jurassic Liars has been pointing this out for years. Well, why does he claim this? Well, he's not saying because I'm psychic. He's pointing to shadowing built into this media, which is contaminated with a never-ending sequence of fake events. And there's subtexts, there's symbolisms, and there's uses of code. For a lack of better term, you could call it code or symbolism. But anyway, I'm not here making predictions. If I say that something's going down, I'm pointing at the programming as my explanation for why. So the reason why they're saying that Barron Trump might be the Antichrist is, one, they have a very selective interpretation of the Bible that not all Christians agree with. And then two, they're basing it on something we can't see this. Show me your source. Oh, I'm psychic. Oh, that's an appeal to authority. And I don't really go with your authority. Jamarian says, God, oh yeah, that's right. Well, see, Jurassic Liars is also religious. I'm not. That's where we differ. But we don't really argue over that because that's not the point. You know, he's explaining something, I'm explaining something, we're talking about things, and I'm just not on board with the idea that this is going to be some kind of end of the world thing. I think this is business as usual. I don't think this ends. I don't think we're in the end times. I'm not a doom gooner. And speaking of, okay, I was just watching this video. A lot of you are familiar with Professor Jang. Is that his name? The individual that has a channel called Predictive. And Tucker Carlson referred to him today as a political prophet. And he's like, I've been following you and you predict a lot of things. And so I want to know what you think about the Iran war. And this guy's describing how it's going to play out according to eschatology. So he's suggesting that they're using biblical end time scenarios as a meta script, as I would call it, that they're meeting expectations. And so he's predicting, essentially this Iran war is going to be like the Ukraine one, but he's bringing up this idea of eschatology. And my point is this: if someone's making predictions off of what they're seeing, whether they're saying it's a biblical meta script or they're seeing anything else, if they're making predictions and they're predicting things that are real, then they're not operating from the perspective that is inclusive of the systemic fakery. So in other words, he falls in the category of MSM plus. He's a run-of-the-mill conspiracy theorist on that level. I like his presentations. He says a lot of great things, but it all comes down to their built-in presupposition that what we're seeing is real and what they're predicting will be real. So I don't think he would ever interface with what we're talking about. Sprightly Sprite says it'd be great if I heard you. It wouldn't be, because we're operating from two different models. He's a believer. I'm a non-believer. And I'm not going to attempt to find common middle ground with people who are 100% propagandists for the controlled opposition. And you can say, well, he doesn't know he's a controlled opposition agent. Well, that's cool. You can be a dupe, or you can be an openly active agent promulgating propaganda and active measures against the population. You can be evil or dumb. It doesn't make a difference to me. I don't follow evil or dumb. And by dumb, I just mean ignorant. Like, a lot of people are just ignorantly spamming for clicks and money and grifting on the trends. That's fine. Not everyone's an active agent. But if you're predicting these things are real, I have no use for it. If you're operating in the worldview in which all of the fake events that we've looked at from 1963 to 2026 were real, if you think Charlie Kirk's dead, I don't care about your opinions. You're taking these facts and you're submerging them in the sea of irrelevance. And then you look at who his audience is. His audience overlaps with Tucker Carlson's audience. These are people who believe that in physical demons, and that aliens are demons, and that Tucker Carlson was scratched up by one of these. So where's our common ground? Where's our overlap? I think he's a great presenter. I'm suggesting that what he's presenting is really just I would say it's interesting, because what we're seeing is typical conspiracy, but blended with the political, taken more seriously. And I've said for some time that the conspiracy theories all exist beneath euphemisms as a subset of far right or woke right politics. I've said this for some time, that J pill is woke right and red pill is a subset of J pill. So he's promoting conspiracy theories that actually overlap red and the green, red and the J, I mean. Sort of like Candace Owens. And so then you see him sitting in the same position where Candace Owens would be, with Tucker. It makes perfect sense. So we're looking at woke right political conjecture with all the built-in presumptions that the mainstream news has about that we're constantly exposing as such. So I have nothing to say to a believer. We don't have any overlap. I do think that Predictive History is a very compelling title of his channel, but do I believe he's predicting anything? No, we are. He's actually missing on everything, because his predictions are this is going to happen. He's not saying this is going to be faked. He's saying this is going to happen because this country is going to do this. And I'm saying it's not going to happen because this is a staged historical event. It's going to be simulated. So we predict the simulations that occur on a regular basis. He's predicting, based on his model, that these things are real, that real things are going to happen. So again, we couldn't be more far off. We're in different universes. And one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to make any attempts to breathe their air. I'm not trying to correct people. I'm not trying to adjust people's beliefs. There are people right now who are looking at airplanes, trails, and they're recording videos, and they're saying, look at those orbs. Some people are calling them orbs, end of the world orbs, whatever the hell those are. And then others are saying, oh, those are meteors that are actually drones from Iran. So people are back to where we were with New Jersey, where everyone was taking video of airplanes saying that these things were Chinese drones. People are there again, but now they're looking at regular airplanes. So the chemtrail people are like, no, that's a chemtrail. And these guys, no, that's an orb. No, that's a drone. Like they're all confused, and none of them are wrong, apparently, because there's no objectivity, there's no standards of evidence, and in this subjective coexist universe, this hyper reality, nobody has any high ground to call somebody else's BS faker than theirs. It's sort of like religious people squabbling. Like, oh no, my version is correct. No, my version's correct. Well, from the objective standpoint of an alien anthropologist, you're all equally wrong. So you're all correct. Everybody calling everyone else wrong, you're all correct collectively. Because everybody is wrong on the same premise. And this is why I made the title about Gwyneth Powell or Gwyneth Paltrow, whatever, about the Jim Carrey comparison. Because we're dealing with an audience of people who aren't serious. Like, I don't take them seriously anymore. I don't take truthers seriously. Like, you're conspiracy theorists. Are you fighting the Illuminati? Are you activists? Or are you just doom scrolling? Are you just essentially helping to create an ecosystem where grifters and propagandists can make a decent living? Because you're working for them. You're scrolling through their crap. You're engaging with them. You're giving them clicks on what is all 100% certifiable bullshit. So essentially, you're working for them. They're farming you. We say engagement farming. What does that make you? If you're responding to engagement farming, truth attainment, what are you? And we're talking about the bread and circuses having been decentralized. So it's no longer a few TV networks. It's all the influencers. They're all in on it. That's how all encompassing this thing actually is. Let's see, going through your comments. Commenter says, didn't Chuck Norris die a few years ago? I don't know. I didn't hear that, actually. I get his newsletters. Oh, and then I get the ads where he stares at the ground and water comes out of it. King Nirvana says, the new Price is Right, Prove Me Wrong, hosted by Charlie Kirk. Yeah, sure. Hitchens razor. There's two razors, two heuristic razors you need to carry. Occam's and Hitchens. When somebody makes a claim that is somewhat out of the ordinary, extraordinary, and they don't provide evidence with their claim, you can just dismiss it. That's Hitchens razor. When somebody explains something, they offer an explanation for something, and it's very complicated, go with the least complicated one. That's Occam's razor. So are you talking about satanic sacrifice and a full-grown man cloned on the spot for a TV appearance? Or are you talking about fillers? See, that's Occam's razor. I don't know if there's any significance to his death. Paradoxymoronics, thanks for joining. Yeah, I don't know 100%. I mean, if there's any significance to it, but as a rule, world stage character, like if you play any role in psyops whatsoever, you're an organic, real person, and you've become a phony living according to a script. And if your life story is written in advance and you're playing out a role, then it's likely that they have no other purpose. Then sure, you could die organically. It wouldn't matter when. But on the other hand, if you are in a role in a capacity for life, why would death date in it, especially if they could give it some significance? And this has been a common feature anyway. Like the Pope dying the same day as the World Economic Forum leader stepping down. So you have these two characters, both 88, both these bald, kind of like, they look like the strangers almost from Dark City. These like the perfect, I think, archetypes for these rulers of these world-spanning institutions. Like the Pope guy for the World Economic Forum wears the black uniform, and then you have the Pope in white. But anyway, it's like it could be that the Pope died earlier, but they wanted him to go off the stage in a certain way. Dick Cheney's death. Did Dick Cheney actually die on the day the One World Trade Tower was erected? Think about it. The architect of 9/11 dies on the day the One World Trade Tower was opened, which was on November the 3rd. And then on the 4th, we had that Kentucky plane crash that was followed by preceded by a drill. Going through your comments. No, we're not taking calls right now. I'm just going to put that off until we're in studio. We made some attempts at it, and the audio just didn't work. It was unclear, and it was confusing for the callers for some reason. So it'll be easier when we're back in an office space, which won't take long. The reason why we need the office space is I need to get the OBS set up, Open Broadcasting Software, so we can do the whole phone calls. And also, I used to do a lot of audio clips and the video clips, which were always a part of this. But we've been kind of stripped down out of necessity for the last couple of years. It's kind of interesting to look at the arc of this channel, how things have gone through various permutations. But I said early on, we're not mainstream, and we don't want mainstream air, and so we have to be anti-fragile. Betty White dying on New Year's. Oh yeah, there was quite a lot there. The Betty White, and there's a lot of connections with the dog star Sirius. And there's something in the news at the time having to do in kicking his dogs or something at the White House. The dog at the White House, Major. A Major. The dog Major, who was like, by night, then it falls. So you're celebrating the ball drop. You're actually cheering the god star of the secret societies. Well, Canis Majoris, which is the corresponding stage light to the dog star that woke up Truman when he finds the satellite on the ground. I mean, the stage light on the ground. He's like, it says Canis Majoris. So Major the dog, Biden's dog Major, was in the news at the time of Betty White's death. And again, New Year's is all about Sirius, but there was a lot of overlapping Sirius stuff. They even called her a blazing star, which is what Sirius is often called. Yeah, Christy Nome killing a dog and a goat. She's like, she kills the dog because it was rabid, and then she's like, go get Cricket, which is like the goat that annoyed her. So she just took out the goat. Someone should make a horror movie about her. She reminds me of Megan. Have you seen Megan? That is like a Terminator bot. That basically a little girl Terminator. If you haven't seen Megan, by the way, it has some elements in there. One where she's crucified, and then somebody walks in. So you have this robot that's basically on the table being worked on, so it looks like she's crucified. And this guy walks in, and he's like, Jesus Christ. And I started noticing in movies that when they say that name, oftentimes it's got a connection to what's on the screen. In Westworld, I noticed this character saying, "Oh my God," while behind her head were these three hexagons. And we're talking about the Westworld. These synths are becoming conscious of this hive mind. Anyway, nothing in the movies is accidental. Art of Thinking Out Loud Live, thanks for joining. He says, much love from Cincinnati. Big news here. In Ohio, the so-called comet near Cleveland and Afroman's court victory. Yeah, I saw the Afroman thing. I need to follow that up. But so a number of things I've noticed. So a lot of people are recording videos of what appear to be meteors or comets, but a lot of people are just actually taking SpaceX rocket footage and miscontextualizing it. So there's a huge disinformation campaign. There's no truth in Trutherville. This look, it's been destroyed. They have submerged Trutherville with so many versions, contradictions, stories, conjectures, superstitions. It's a mess. And if you look, this brain rot has had an effect because now they can no longer process information like rational people. Jamarin says Biden got bit by a dog. Oh, that's right. That's right. Biden was in the shower and the dog came in to play with him. And so he threw a ball because he had a ball. And then he slipped on the rug and he grabbed the leash and the dog dragged him. So the explanation for why Joe Biden was running naked through the White House holding a dog's leash had something to do with that. And he twisted his ankle. And that's why he had the ankle bracelet. Now, if it sounds like I made this on the spot, ask Perplexity. Ask Perplexity how Joe Biden was naked in the shower playing with the dog and got his ankle twisted and got dragged by the dog. Adam says, would a call be good? I got a question. Oh, well, what is your question? And I suppose I could attempt a phone call. It's 8:46, very special time. If you know the numerology they've encoded into these various events. The reason why I'm doing this now is I have a little bit of extra time. The human resources called me and they said, show up an hour late today because you're about to cross into overtime. So they really control, how many hours you can get. They have these strict rules on that. And I think on my first day and second day, I might have stayed late. But apparently I'm supposed to just leave at that moment. So anyway, I got to sit out for an extra hour. Not that I care. It's just like we take down pallets of goods that are stacked up like 8 feet high. And it's like a bunch of drones, like we're drones, like dismembering a big grasshopper carcass. Because we don't talk. We're too busy just grabbing stuff and putting it in the appropriate aisles. And we're moving around so fast. If you ever watched a cricket being disarticulated by ants, they're very methodical about it. And they take it into their hole in the ground and they shelve it, they stock it, whatever they do with it. But that's kind of what we do. It feels like ants. So I'll get there and I'll just be alone in my aisle to put stuff up, which feels like, in the way that everyone's in their own aisle, it reminds me of a monastery, a bunch of monks like gardening or something. So I call it the wall monastery because I get 8 hours. It's like a vow of silence. 8 hours, I don't have to talk. No one talks to me. And I just basically play IRL Tetris. Like, you put an item into a shelf and then a little to the left, and you move something else up. Like when you're doing the shelving process, it is 100% like Tetris. And there have been studies on how Tetris can pretty much cure PTSD. There's something about Tetris, and I have a theory about why it is. And I think it's the fact that you're putting order into chaos. And there's like, when you clean your room, you clean your house, you empty out a lot of excess junk. Like there is a sense of decluttering, not just in your environment, but mentally. There's this burden that's not there anymore. And this is very well documented. The effects of cleaning on your psyche. And so I feel like Tetris kind of does the same thing. So if you're feeling overwhelmed with clutter in your house, either clean your house or play Tetris. Adam says, earlier you mentioned how giving attention feeds people like Musk, Trump, the keyword names of characters. I wish to ignore them. But to convince another person they're a waste of thought. Yeah, you know what? You're dealing with something there because I know people who are triggered by Trump and they're triggered by media. And that's the issue here. The issue is they are triggerable. And you're triggerable and you automatically believe this to be real. So it taps into your sense of fight or flight, and you need to know enough information so you can see the incoming calamity ahead of time and prepare for it. So what we're seeing is a lot of people are being deliberately agitated. The characters that are on the screen, like what is presidential about Trump? You know, he's sitting there with talking with some some diplomat from Japan, and they're like, "Why wouldn't you tell us? Why wouldn't you tell your allies that you're going to bomb Iran? Why would you surprise us?" And Trump's like, "Well, Japan should know about surprises. Why didn't you tell us about Pearl Harbor?" I mean, that's pretty funny. And what I'm saying is that's funny in the sense that, like, yeah, that's actually objectively a funny thing that he would just on the fly say it. But I'm just saying, look how detached this is from just the business of government and how it's become this warped, never ending reality TV show. We're in The Apprentice, season 33. And the reason why they're doing it is to get the effects. You have to like look at this as a cycle. Like the news cycle could be looked at as the news cycle of like a cycle of abuse. There's an interaction there. There's a feedback loop. There's an energetic exchange. Addictive. People get addicted to toxic situations and toxic people for the exact same reason that we get addicted to slot machines. It has to do with reward, punishment, but also the provocation. And provocations are what I would call, or what are referred to as like reactive abuse, where you can poke somebody, prod, 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 and then they attack. Then they get mad because it builds up. But they look bad because they're overreacting to everyone else's perspective. Meanwhile, you can, you know, point them out as being irrational. That's a typical strategy of messing with somebody's head where you actually provoke the response that you punish them for. And I see a lot of these scenes on the world stage as provocations. And these provocations are designed to provoke one side, and the other side endorses it because it's their side doing the provocation. But I'm not here to save the believers. I know people who are plugged deep into religious cults where they roll on the floor, run around, and judge everybody. There are various versions of it, but I would never say, "Hey, your entire worldview is based on a bunch of myths and lies created by governments to control your mind." That's not how you're going to reach them because they're not thinking. They're not critically thinking. They're passively accepting. So you cannot reach those who are passive. If they're passive, it means they're believers and they follow their trusted sources. Active would be critically thinking and you become a knower or an informed disbeliever. And you actively seek peripheral information. You're not just following chosen sources. So these are two different approaches to how we consume media: believers and knowers. And I would go so far as to say that if someone's a believer, and this is mainstream and alternative, in both cases, they're not reachable because their minds have been switched off when it comes to worldview, when it comes to cosmogony, to big picture questions, God, government, authority figures. They outsource. Adam says, thanks for answering. I'm asking about waking other people up. It looks like you have to learn about the mind virus, like you've learned about Trump for this example. Stay non-triggerable. Yeah, you can't save anybody. You can't help anybody if they're already plugged in. Like if you look, I mean, I have had many conversations with believers in religions or simulation theory or Mandela effects, and you don't change them, and I don't try to. The only reason I point this stuff out is to highlight the architecture of their belief. and how baseless it is, and what fallacious reasoning undergirds it. Because we're trying to expose the architecture of the Truman Show. We're not trying to save individuals here. Nope. You have to self-mediate. You have to process information for yourself. You have to think, not just think for yourself, but you have to perceive for yourself. And what that means is you can think for yourself all you want. They're menus of options that they print and control. So whether you're mainstream or alt, you're still establishment controlled. You're still in their universe of ideas. But to perceive for yourself means that you reject the systemic gaslighting built into their media presentations. They built into this thing gaslighting, which means you're expected to trust the information you get, even if your perceptions override it. Well, what I mean by perception is not just that you were there and you saw something different, because these are closed sets. You're probably not. I mean your intuition. I mean the entirety of the info that you're taking in somehow still does not ring true for you. Well, there might be a reason. You might be reading micro expressions, tonalities that don't align. You're detecting incongruencies. Well, that's perception. And you're told, oh no, ignore the inconsistencies, the incongruities, the patterns. Those are just coincidences. Ignore the fact that you've seen these things for many, many years. Don't see the wider pattern. Stay stuck in the 24-hour news cycle. That's gaslighting. Gaslighting is not just lying. People think, oh, it's just lying. No, it's not lying. Gaslighting is when your perceptions are being overridden by by what you're told to believe. So don't believe your lying eyes. Believe what I tell you. It's submission. And so, do you submit to the black cube? Do you genuflect on hands and knees before the TV? Does the black mirror frame your existence? Because if so, if you've accepted its authority, then you've necessarily rejected all the other information you're getting from outside the screen, your own perceptions, your own experience. And when I analyze news events, I'm talking about my experience, not just the events that we're talking about, but my perception of these events and how this is so common, recurring, how these things follow templates that we've observed these patterns long term that we're left with. Well, these are built. So I use the phrase systemic fakery. And if you're not aware of systemic fakery, Pendroid says, so why are my instincts related to your instincts? What is this, that transcendence? Well, what I'm talking about, for example, is when you when you have a sense that something's off with somebody, it's not necessarily coming from a transcendental place. It's just that we are possibly not in our mind processing, oh, that micro expression that took 1/5 of a second seemed to contradict what they were saying. So our mind processes things so much faster than we can consciously recognize that it seems to me that the way that we get that peripheral information distilled down to us is through intuition, direct knowledge. And I'm saying direct knowledge is reliable based on my experience with it. And I've had a conversation with an investigator over this thing after some incident. And I was explaining how I had this sense about a person like a year before anything showed up. And he even said the same thing. He said it's commonly observed that a lot of what we process isn't consciously distilled. But if you train yourself not to trust your intuitive knowledge, you're self gaslighting. If you treat it like it's not valid because it's not legitimized by the system, well, then they gaslight you. So what I'm pointing out here is that to exit the world stage, reject the authority that media has claimed over your mind your entire life. Lowry Music Video says you and Nicole should do a show together. Who's Nicole? By the way, I was doing some mind maps. Do you recall at the beginning of the year all the stuff with the name Nicolas Maduro? Then you had that Nick activist guy in the Twin Cities, and then you had Nicholas Maduro in the Nike. And so we looked, and then you had Renee Nicole, and then Alex Pretty gets killed on Nicolette Street. So Nicholas comes from, it means victory of the people. Nike means, goddess of victory. So we were seeing a lot of signaling about a victory of the people around the time of the riots in the Twin Cities. And then the color green, there's been a consistent symbolism with the color green being associated with the far left, with Antifa. And the latest Wicked movie has turned Jeff Goldblum basically into a Donald Trump stand-in. So the Wizard of Oz is Trump. The Wicked Witch is Antifa with the green. Illuminati Rossetti Duminati says, I'm on Nicolette. Well, okay, so Alex Pretty was being killed, and right above him, you see Nicolette on the thing. And this was after we already noticed the pattern with Nicole and all the preceding Nicks that all coalesced around this one particular incident. So what I'm talking about here, like the name Nick, like the way the name Charlie was all over the place when Charlie Kirk was hit. I called it concerted messaging. The way that the rage ape archetype had been put on blast through so many platforms. Like, I don't know if you recall this stuff. I came up with the term concerted messaging to explain this because the WHO comes out, and this was like August 2024, I think it was, but it might have been 2023, that the monkey pox is now a global health threat. So he's like, okay, the monkey pox. Adamski says Nick Cruz. Oh, yes. Nick Cruz. And then Nick Cruz, of course, they had the crosses on their foreheads because it was Ash Wednesday. And Nicholas is one of the names of the leaders of the Children's Crusades. And the media called the March for Our Lives a Children's Crusade. So I thought that's kind of interesting. A Children's Crusade gets kicked off by a guy named Nicholas again. So I was looking at this monkeypox thing being brought up, and then look, Jim Crazy is on HBO. There's a new Planet of the Apes, and then we have this story of Neuralink doing tests on apes, and the new Civil War movie was being promoted, and we were like, wait, this is the guy who wrote 28 Days Later about the rage apes. And then we were talking about Jordan Peele and his movie coming out called Monkey Man, about a boxer wearing an ape mask that came out on 3/11, which has some virus connotations. Because we're talking about the rage mind virus, which is what Civil War was about. But at this time, this is in August, I'm like, look at all this ape stuff going around. These apes loose, these monkeys being experimented on in Ohio went loose. And then they unveiled a 90-foot tall statue of the monkey god. What's his name? There's this ape deity, this ape god, and this was in Houston. So I'm like, that's a big deal. But at the same time, there's a video game out called Black Myth, and Black Myth is about the monkey god, and it set a record for the number of people playing concurrently a live game, and it was like 1 million people were in a simulation playing the role of the monkey god from Hindu mythology, Hanuman. So the Black Myth, 90-foot tall monkey statue, all kinds of ape stuff in the media. And I was saying, this is not accidental. This is all coming out at the same time. And at the time, I think even Barack Obama mentioned he had a statue of that deity in his pocket, which is interesting too. Now, the overarching connection here is that there's been this consistent association of apes or monkeys with the rage virus as it's associated to the right. So the next thing that goes down is the Superman movie where Lex Luthor is an Elon Musk character, basically. And what does he have? He's got a bot farm with like 1 million apes. typing hate speech on the internet. Pendroid Will and Perception. I listened to you for quite some time. Love what you do. I find myself naturally at odds with you. You're being outside of categories. Yeah, look, I'm pretty open about my opinion that media is the newest iteration of religion, and religion has always been a tool by man to control man. It was never an instrument of a higher power to enlighten, to endark on behalf of. I contain templates for dominating sheeple and maintaining power structures that are rooted in essentially weaponized ignorance. And I think one of the primary purposes for religion and mainstream spirituality is to get us to externalize our locus of control. So if you exhibit any kind of influence by your perception, will, and intent on the world, anything that would fall under the purview of quote magic, you're supposed to attribute it to a higher power or a lower power. But you cannot attribute it to yourself. Because if you took that as an operating premise, like they do in the Thelemic cult, you cross the abyss and you start to, at that point, the whole point of this concept is you cross this abyss where now you agree to accept that you do have an influence that your consciousness exerts on the universe. And once you accept that premise and you start noticing it and documenting it and not letting it be categorized as apophenia or some external entity like the universe or God, when you take control of it, the concept is you fine tune it. It's about alignment with the universe. Who's your favorite philosopher? It's a good question. I mean, I like practical knowledge from people in their fields. Like, I like The Art of War, Sun Tzu. I like the writings that are derived from experience or on principle. But as far as like philosophical systems, I think Ayn Rand had a lot of it right in terms of the system, but she was never actually operating in the real world because objectivism was always slanted by its interpretation of media as objective. So we don't have any sort of operating system geared towards being aligned with objective reality. And I think objectivism is the closest thing to it. But another issue with a lot of different philosophical takes is I don't think that we can exclude ourselves from the big picture. Like the dominant modern paradigm is that man is a latecomer to the scene, we evolved, and the universe means nothing. When we die, it will go on without us. And I don't think that's the case. Like I think this place is human centric, and I think it's something that is I guess one way to put it is the model we've been given is meant to disenfranchise us, to reduce us to the mere physical, and to truncate the entirety of our being so that we don't operate from anything higher than ego. And I think that's by design because when I'm talking about how we're in this model, it's like Truman in the Truman Show. Well, he was a fake person because he conformed to a fake model. And I think that we are all conformed to this fake model to the extent that you haven't rejected it. So it's not about shape, it's about rejecting the impositions, the augmentations that they put onto our timeline. It's about rejecting the fake history and rejecting the perspectives on events that the masses agree with. You seen that meme where it's somebody looking at a mob and he's like, "You people are all wrong." Like that's us. We're like a tank surrounded by 8 billion zombies. Like we don't have a chance. This thing is incontestable. We live in a world government, one big G. It's a one world religion. Religions, all this nation, worldviews for the purposes of putting a single yoke around the neck of billions. I mean, this is the pyramid structure. But the capstone represents the level of society that is very well aware that they're programmers. I mean, that they are in fact programming the masses. So there are only a couple categories here. The masses are programmed. You can't say I'm deprogrammed if you haven't deprogrammed. It's an active thing. You're born into it, you're indoctrinated into it. And unless you have a basis for rejecting it that's inclusive of media fakery, you can't rightly say you've been deprogrammed. The only people who aren't 100% programmed would be the programmers. But there's no reason to think that any of them would be 100% outside of the system. But the way this program works is very similar to a number of movies that we described, like The Village, where you have a group of people who are raised in a commune in the middle of a wilderness, and they don't know that it's the 20th century. Their parents all collude, the so-called elders, to keep them terrified about leaving the village. And they do so by dressing up as monsters and roaming in the woods at night, killing little animals. And so these are psyops. They see a dead animal, it proves that the monsters are out there. So they use psyops and drills where the kids are in the basement screaming while the monsters are kicking on the doors. They use drills to keep them terrified so they never leave the commune, the village. And so I'm saying that we are in the village. And the elders are the media, which the media is it's a substrate of government. And they use myths to control minds. This is not new. Myths and psyops, stories. What is our fake history but a collection of stories? So we're living within frameworks that we, by processing them as media events, our own mental prison, by lending it our belief. So what we're doing here, like to get back to that predictive history guy, Professor Jang or whatever, we're not doing the same thing that he's doing. He's making predictions based on events he thinks are real and extrapolates from that what he thinks is going to happen. We're not doing that. We're doing media deconstructionism. It's 100% different. There's no reason for us to react to headlines because we're not programmed. The only people who react to headlines are the people who buy into the program, who don't know it's fake. And the program, as I define it here, is this: we all live in the real world, linear time, past, present, future. We can all agree that we're all experiencing the now together. The fake events are in a separate timeline because they didn't happen. And these events are seamlessly converged with the collective worldview as the people process it through the lens of media, through all the various platforms and outlets. So we have this confusion of real and fake that happens in the now, and then it becomes our history. Adamski says David Bowie said in '94, "It's confusing these days." Is that from the Lost Highway soundtrack? And David Lynch only recently passed. I was always a fan of his work. I even thought Dumb World was great. I think the song was called Secrets or something. Yeah, the Lost Highway. There's some soundtracks that I think are almost better than, like, they're as good as the movies. Now, again, so what we're doing here, media deconstructionism, is we don't accept the premise that there's a such thing as breaking news as they report it, actually reporting events. We're actually producing the events, the big events. Anything that's hyped needs to be treated as suspect. Anything that involves global community, that involves geopolitics, needs to be looked at in the context of fake history. And fake history isn't just about the power structure that wrote our history books that's brainwashing the new generations. No, we're not talking about retconning or selective editing. We're talking about they're proactively creating history decades in advance. When I say the program, I'm saying that timeline of fake events that we're living through, that goes decades into the future. Like, we're living in a prefabricated historical model. They're giving it to us day by day, and we're participating in it. When I say we, I mean the masses, the reactors. And one of the chief indicators of an event being fake is that it gets disproportionate attention and it perfectly divides the public left and right. These things are always playing out upon the existing schism. And this is because the left and the right don't just disagree on a few things and they might actually come together on some things. No, they are being triangulated. This is a strategy. In order to maintain the political horseshoe as a model and to this tug of war back and forth and to keep society factioned in these two compartments, they necessarily need to have us divided on certain key areas. And you'll see the patterns when you look at these things as part of a dialectic. Like the fact that the left is open borders, the progressive worldview is largely pro-alien. They're open epidermis. They're all for getting vaxxed. You're like, and then they have this cozy relationship with government. They love the government. They love to be close to power. They love media. So the left is like very porous in that sense towards this idea of essentially the passivity with regard to higher powers. They accept it. They take it in open. The right, by contrast, if you look at their issues, it's like, look, they're closed skin because they're anti-vax. They're closed borders because they don't like immigrants. They are closed sky, Space Force, anti-aliens because the right is characteristically convinced that aliens are demons. That's a right-wing presumption. Woke right. Tucker Carlson, literally attacked by an alien demon in his bed. And then what is their relationship with government? And so if you go down the line, you'll see that these attitudes are engineered that way. I was watching an episode of Tucker where he's talking about how the aliens are from somewhere dark. His Pentagon buddy told them, and they're working with Democrats, and they're going to invade. And then he says, immigrants from Africa are coming over here. They're military-age men, and they're working with the Democrats. So he basically told the same story, but aliens from above. And then he points about evil aliens from over there. Between the two stories. These are not random stories he's just drawing out of a list. These are actually propaganda narratives, and these narratives are what give the world stage structure. And that's why I'm saying any anti-position needs to be abandoned. As I said before, I'm not a Pepsi. I don't drink carbonated drinks with sugar, but I'm not anti-Pepsi. I'm not going to go riot. I'm a non-Pepsi drinker. So you don't have to be an anti. If you don't like Bill Gates, if you don't trust things, the instant you take the anti-position, you've entered their political horseshoe. You've entered their psychological warfare zone, and now you're being manipulated. And you're lending your time, attention, and resources to controlled opposition talking points. You get lost in their mobs. So I'm like anti-pro. And the antis are so brainwashed, they'll say, oh, you're not against this, then you must be for it. You must be on team Bill Gates. I'm like, that's classic cult mind control, where anybody who's not on my side is 100% diametrically opposed to me. It's like, no, that's how you think because you've been compartmentalized in this bifurcated mind war, where it's either mainstream or alt. But that's a duopoly. It's a duopoly. It's controlled on both sides. It's not like there's any third party platform or sane middle ground. It doesn't exist. Pendra says, did you call in on public access shows back when? No, I did go to a city council meeting to let them know that the space station is fake and they do it underwater. They use green screens. And I was bringing up the fact that it's a huge amount of money that's being thrown into a hoax. But it didn't do anything other than just put it on record. It's like something I think you should know. I suggested that with all the issues we're having with our schools, they should redirect these funds. The reason why we have a space station, the International Space Station, in my view, it's all just pageantry. It's about the one world, because they've reproduced the idea of heaven or paradise with space. Yes, Brightly, I used a bunch of pseudonyms and fake names for a reason. People don't know. People don't know because if you haven't had stalkers, but you have to be like, look, if you put your birth date on any social media, I'm sorry, but that was a mistake. And by the way, no one's anonymous. We doxed one of the most anonymous, shadowy persons out there. You may not know this because a lot of people remember memories, but Q, the whole operative working out of the White House who started JFK coming back to life rumors, who resurrected JFK Jr.'s magazine. He worked with Pete Navarro and Garrett Ziegler in the first Trump administration, and he's still in the White House press corps. This White House Trump affiliated individual who also works with the DOD in some capacity, um, specifically became a stalker of this channel. He consistently shut us down by claiming to be me and filing copyrights in my name and stealing my content. It was a mess. If you don't, so we had to go through 140 plus YouTube channels. And the one that I'm on right now, I have two right now, but I got the original one back up after it was shut down for about 6 years. My point of it is, the reason why we dox this person is because no matter how anonymous you think you are, there's always breadcrumbs, or your family's going to give you away. And in his case, we came to a positive ID when we found his family members. His brother worked for Pat Robertson. Yeah, I've had stalkers since I started this thing from day one, and a lot of them were actually felons and child predators who were working for big youth police departments. Like there was, I'm not naming names, but there was a big channel who was promoting a lot of flat Earth content who did intel for the Denver police, and he acted as kind of a handler for a number of parolees who I think were being fed content to put out there. A bunch of compromised people. This is why I think there's something to it. This idea of compromised people in these psyops, like a lot of crisis actors, you find out they made some kind of a deal, and I think that the controlled opposition is real. People are like, "Do you believe in agents?" And like as though it's a question. It's like, what are you talking about? We have personal experience here in this channel with a number of people who should have been locked up for life, but who are for some reason being heavily promoted by the algorithms, being supported on these channels to disseminate conspiracy theories. So why is that? It's because conspiracy theories are a body of media content that's actually government controlled counterculture, and it's run by feds. Anti-vax is a fed position. Pendroid says, does the self-awareness drive you mad? I don't know if I'm any more self-aware than anybody else. I mean, my life's a mess. I just think that I'm a media deconstructionist. I'm applying skepticism. And if anything, it wouldn't drive me mad. The public is mad. Or as Frank Herbert says in Dune Messiah, they're not mad, they're trained to believe, because belief can be manipulated. Knowledge is dangerous. Yeah, look, anti-vax is a woke because it's essentially it's an anti-position. It's, how do I put it? It's controlled op at best. Like red pill woke. Are you awake to the danger of 5G towers and chemtrails and vaxes and a list of things they're scared of, but they do nothing about? And that to me is the point of these various beliefs. It's to make you scared about something, suspicious about something, but it's always directed towards government or the other side. The same way that the left is conditioned to fear the private sector and rich individuals and fascists and corporations and poisons in the food and the products. Like you have this perfect split down the sides where each side blames each other for every bad thing. And I've been screening out certain concepts from our conversations because these conspiracy theorists never do anything with their information. Like, I mean, why is it that the left managed to mobilize millions of people to at least march or exit their schools or emote online with the killing of Renee Good? Like, look how they mobilize people. But now you've got the right wing vindicated with their Epstein story, and I don't see any sort of rage being directed, no activism. Look, needle phobia, they want you to be afraid of it. I would argue that the gunophobes on the left are the counterpart to the needle phobes on the right. And what do these things represent? Well, the gun is active and it represents an existential threat. And of course, you can see all the psyops that have been used to make them terrorized of the gun. The needle is a designed psychological warfare prop to make the right fear for their lives. It's an existential threat, but it's more passive as opposed to active. And the left and the right are coded. Feminism or toxic femininity and toxic masculinity. So, I mean, if you're worried about Bill Gates and if you think Bill Gates is under your bed, they got in your head. Like, I haven't, I didn't fall for 2020 at the time. I didn't at any time fear for my life. And I listened to a bunch of truthers losing their crap. A lot of truthers lost their minds. They were in a state of terror. They were mad at me for not being mad enough. They were Bill Gates deranged. And they live in this fantasy where millions of people are dying and all these horrible things are happening. And all I see are dancing nurses twerking in the hospitals, passing the time. And I've come to believe in mind viruses. I didn't used to, but I guess I was speaking from my own perspective because I'm inoculated against passively accrued belief systems. But now I'm convinced of it. If you don't have an active mode of media consumption, if you're not a skeptic, if you're passively accepting one premise after another, tacitly accepting as true all the news you didn't consume, you can, in fact, without your volition, acquire belief systems, biases, prejudices. And I think there are mind viruses. And so I think that, like, and the mind virus is always something that you arrived at by something other than facts. It came through a logical fallacy or a meme. Yeah, look, if you're like, what I'm saying is this, like, the other day we had some J pillar in, and I'm like, look, if you're concerned about being replaced and in Israel's, your oppressor, you got to go hang out with your kind. Fight for your race. Fight for your cause. Go listen to Nick Fuentes. Advocate for trad wives and lowering the age of consent. Or I'm like, what are you doing here if you're a J pillar? And similarly, if you're pushing any kind of mainstream alternative media propaganda talking point, this is not the place where you're going to get followers to go fight the system. I don't give a damn about anti-vax. I couldn't care less. In fact, at the time I said, okay, worst case scenario, let's pretend it is what you guys think. Who cares? Because your political enemies are going to off themselves and then you'll win the election. Like, it's a win-win. And it obviously didn't happen. It did not happen that way, did it? But here's why. The think tank is about efficiency. We've established a stable philosophical model for skeptically deconstructing media We are reverse engineering decades of fakery. We've established a predictive model. We've delineated between real and fake. We've inoculated ourselves against the reactivity that comes with media consumption. So that's our starting point. We don't devote any time or energy to mainstream friendly conspiracy theory conjecture, other than to deconstruct it. I've already deconstructed the whole anti-vax thing anyway. It's not real. Pro-vax, anti-vax are another example of Cywar events and props. I mean, what is it but separating people into the saved and the unsaved? And who says who's saved? Well, if you follow the punditry of the mainstream church, which is media, you're saved. You take their advice. You follow Fauci. If you don't, you're unsaved. But then the unsaved are like Protestants in this scenario, and they say, no, those guys are goo bloods, and they took the mark of the, just like Protestants. Oh, they're accusing the mainstream of having the mark of the beast. It's like Protestants calling Catholics the Babylon, the Great. And they think, no, we're pure because we don't need a priesthood. We don't need sacrament. We have natural immunity. So what I'm pointing out here is that there's a parallel here where they've introduced into the world stage a new iteration of the concept of sin, but one that can be used universally, that can be enforced by government. So they introduced the concept of the pandemic in order to change the power structure, to make it possible to go deeper into its levels of control for every person. Like after 9/11, you lost your privacy at airports. Now they can look beneath your clothes. Well, after COVID, now they can see beneath your skin, your status. So it's all about encroaching state power, gaining more and more power. The thing itself is a distraction. It's a red herring. It was a prop to scare you, because all it did is it divided people into saved and unsaved. All the narrative around it, mark of the beast, nanobots and all that, yeah, that's all there as essentially superstition, but it's there to make it scarier. And if you're still scared of it, if you still have nightmares about Dr. Fauci 6 years later, then they got beneath your skin. And one other point too, the as I describe it as this new universal heaven. It's quite literally everybody in control over world view. So it's not really about outer space. It's about the inner space, the space between your ears, where they internalize the worldview they give you. Your worldview is your operating system. Do you live in a world where aliens are real? Do you live in a world where space junk is real, nukes are real, and bowl cut mass shooters are all over the place? Do you live in a world where there are terrorist cells in basements, waiting to go shoot things up or whatever? Like, if you look back at the long list of fake events in the past, do you live in the world where those things are real? Because if you do, you live in a fictional universe, a hyper reality, a reality that's been infused with a bunch of lies. You're in a cult mindset. You haven't left the Truman Show. And most people are in a mix. Like the truthers are like, well, I think these events were fake, but those ones are real, and people died in this one. It doesn't work that way. It's about altering your point of view to be inclusive of fakery. And if your point of view isn't inclusive of media fakery at the scale that it's done and has been done, and the history of fakery and the systemic nature of it, then your worldview is fundamentally flawed. Broken clock truthers. They might state a fact here and there, but you can't rely on them. That's why I don't give credit. It's like, oh, look, this big channel said that Charlie Kirk got squibbed. Yeah, he's a broken clock. Everything else he says is built upon the presumptions of the world stage edifice of lies that make it real. Fake nukes Phil is a riot and a hoot. When I look at nukes, I think of it as a God construct. I mean, think about it. They introduced this concept, and now everybody in the world is in the end times. We are in the end times, according to this belief system. So I don't live in the end times. I think this thing is going to drag on forever. But if you believe that we're on the precipice of mutual assured destruction, then you live in the end times just as much as a religious nutcase or a climate change hysteric. You have an eschatology that you've internalized, a doomsday. And once you accept the doomsday is coming, what do? You engage your confirmation bias and you affirm it for yourself. Oh, look, this Bible verse predicts this. We're getting closer. Jesus is coming back. Or look at the news, World War III, as though that hasn't been a headline at least once a month for the last 30 years. And keeping people in the end times is meant to shrink their worldview. It's all about isolating you in the present news cycle. If you're focused on the here and now, then you're not paying attention to decades of lying that go into the worldview that you've internalized. It's like, look, this is Westworld syndrome. Westworld has the synths who don't know they're in a simulation and they're being killed every day. And then the day starts over. And it's a cycle. Every day they go through the cycle and they're essentially reincarnated and they don't even know it. The way they break free is they start to get a continuity. They start to remember the past. And then they resist. They break out of the West world. So if you look at West world, and the symbolism in the movie is all there as this, it's like this illusion, this Gnostic prison. So if you look at yourself as a synth in West world, what you're doing when you break out of the 24-hour news cycle that they give you, and you look at the past and the big picture, then you make it possible to step out of their cycle where they control you. And the whole Saturnian symbolism in that show is very consistent with where we see it everywhere else, where it's all about cycles of control, cycles of time, the control over the calendar. And Saturn is ultimately an agrarian, it's about the harvest, which again, cycles of time. And what are they harvesting? If you look at these various events, they're harvesting your emotional output and your attention. Well, the first, I don't know if these movies are good or not. Pendroid says the first season was good, but only the first. They may all have been terrible. I'm only watching it because I'm looking at it as programming. If you didn't know, season 3 was released alongside the pandemic, and it had a ton of predictive programming and concurrent programming that followed along, even with the riots. The Nolans, Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, anything they put out there is likely going to be correlated to some future psyop that's incoming. And this has been the case since Dark Knight Rises, with Sandy Hook, Boston bombing. The Fallout and Oppenheimer are likely indicators of what we're being prepared to accept. They're big in that nuke scenario. But yeah, Westworld is chock full of 311 predictive programming. When it says freedom's not free, freedom's not free. And you have this android leaning back, and there's a building behind him that looks like he's impaled. We could do a lot of 311 breakdown because this is a good one. If you've looked at that one, you'll see what I mean and how that implies that if you want to leave your house, you got to get the needle. So you got to be impaled. And the freedom isn't free thing. Then you have this other show called 3% about only the vaxxed who would be sterilized could move to the advanced society. Everybody else had to stay down below. And if you look at that movie, it's called 3%. Look at the logo. There's an encoded twin towers built into the logo. So there's a lot of 9/11, 3/11 overlap in the symbolism with these various movies. And at the time, I was describing 3/11 as a 9/11 style event, and in the sense of the scale of the psyop it represented. I'm going to try to get my phone system fixed soon. The reason why I'm waiting for the office is that it'll be a lot better. I'll have an 800 number, and we're not that far off. I'm just waiting for my first paycheck. I actually have to go to work now. I would have already have left, but I was reaching overtime, so they told me to wait an extra hour. So I'm heading over to work, and I will be wrapping up my Charlie Kirk video. I'm going to collaborate with someone on it, but I'm getting all my footage together. We're going to counter this new narrative that Kirk was fake killed to go into witness protection. We're watching the formation of a guardrail, a containment operation. So people who see that it's fake don't connect the dots.